Welcome to all.
All right, thank you. I hope you can hear me okay. And I just want to say thank you for everyone for your interest in our program today. My name is Kimberly Schultz, and I'm a referee with the 26th Circuit Court here in Alpena and Montmorency County. And I just thought I'd start out with giving a little bit of a background of who I am. And so I've been practicing law since 1997. I went to law school at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon. And then from there, I graduated and moved down to Southern California and took the California bar. And so I was licensed first out of law school to practice law in California. And then after a year or so, I moved up to Santa Clara, San Jose, actually. And I worked for the Santa Clara County Superior Court there, which is similar to our circuit court. And then after a little while there, I moved up to Seattle, Washington, and took the Washington bar. So there I worked for Bill Gates's father's firm, and then I found a small firm to work for as well. Stayed there for a couple of years and then moved back home. And then when I moved home in 2012, I was appointed as the staff attorney for the friend of the court for the circuit court. And then from there, I was appointed as the attorney referee for the 26th Circuit Court. And that was in January of 2015, and I've been doing that ever since then. My parents are Ben and Marge Granlund, and let's see, I have a blended family. I have a family with David Gilner, my two children, Cameron and Aiden, and then his two, Callie and Cambry. And then we have a bulldog, Rosie. But for as far as being a referee, a lot of people ask me, what is that job? What do you do? And so essentially I sit on a bench, I hear court hearings, I wear a robe, and then I make decisions and submit those to the circuit court judges. So Judge Bolzer and Judge Black. And then if they agree, they sign my opinions and they put that into a court order, and then it becomes a court order. So by law, I have the authority to make decisions, get those into a recommendation for the court to sign. And so for here, I sit mostly on neglect and abuse cases and also delinquency cases, and then some friend of the court child support cases. So that's essentially a nutshell of what I do. And so I'll let Janelle talk about herself.
Hi, I am Janelle Mott. I have been the juvenile officer here in Alpena County for almost 6 years. I believe Kim was appointed January 1st, and then I came in March of 2015. So we're almost 6 years doing this. I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania called Pleasant Gap, about 10 minutes outside of Penn State University. I did my undergraduate and graduate work at Penn State, and just as I was wrapping that up, I met my would-be husband and moved to Alpena. I went to law school at Michigan State University. I graduated from there in 2011 and have had 2 little girls since that time and taken on this job. So got kind of a wide variety of experiences, and it's been a ride. So I think we can start talking about the Pivot program, and I think it probably makes the most sense to start at the beginning with that. And I think this is the kind of thing that Kim and I should have mentioned, when I was in law school and fresh out of law school, I worked for an attorney, Laura Green, who shared office space with Kim. So when our referee now was in private practice, we worked together in Laura Green's office for 3 or 4 years, and then had a couple of years off before we came kind of back together in this new job. And I think what we've seen over the last 6 years is a lot of the same patterns repeated over and over and over again. We see a lot of different kids that have a lot of the same issues. And Referee Schultz and myself have both made recommendations to the court to send kids to long-term residential, send them to detention. And what we've seen is we send these kids, the county pays a lot of money. I mean, $300, $400, $500, $600 a day for anywhere from 10 to 18 months. And the kids do great in the facility. They're doing well. They're completing their schooling. They're engaged. They're successful. We bring them home, and 3 months later, we're right back to where we started. The behaviors and issues that existed that caused them to have to leave the community are now back again. So we've spent a lot of county money in an effort to rehabilitate these youth that long-term we're having no luck with. So we've had an ongoing conversation for years. What can we do? How about this? What's this county doing? Will that work for us? And what we found is, because of our kind of isolated geographical location, and then also access to resources, all the programs that work in a place like Lansing or Grand Rapids, they're not going to work here in Alpena. We don't have access to those kind of resources. We don't have the amount of therapists, clinicians that they have. We don't have school systems that are equipped to deal with the level of need that these kids have. And that's kind of where Pivot started. Can we do this? Should we start with school? Can we add counseling? When Judge Black was appointed to the bench in February, he came over and talked to referee Schultz and I. What do you want to do and how do we get there? We had a bunch of meetings, and thus the Pivot program was born. So I think as we start the PowerPoint, you can see, and Kim, I don't know if you want to do how the kids came up with our PIVOT.
Yeah, it was very exciting. We had many discussions among the group partners and all of the adults involved about what the name and what is the meaning of the name. And Pivot was chosen as the name, and we all agreed we should provide it to the students and give them as one of their tasks. They are coming together. They don't know each other. They're coming from all different backgrounds and all different reasons, and ages 9th grade through 12th grade, which is a pretty big age span. And so we wanted them to have some commitment in the program, and for them to believe in themselves, and for them to define what the program really meant to them. And so after they had some time with their school success worker, Ms. Hunt, they came up with the words that had meaning to them. And then they picked the ones that they, as a group, really liked. And so they have patience, independence, individual, value, options, outstanding, and truthfully thinking harder. And we had them come to court. We had them present their ideas to us so that they could have some real voice, so they can feel that we are listening to them, and to get them involved and engaged in the program.
And this, again, is not a vacuum. We developed this program in association with NEMROC, NEMSCA, the School Success Program, Catholic Human Services, and Alpena Public Schools. And this was really, I mean, a 10-12 meeting, off the ground, up and running in 3 months kind of program. And I think it's interesting that the very first meeting, everybody got together. We sat down with all these people. The Department of Health and Human Services was there. And within 5 minutes of our pitch, everybody at the table said, yes, we're in. What do you need? How do we do this? So I think that's really exciting that all the community partners see the need. They're identifying the same kind of weaknesses that we've seen. And then we have some core community contributors, including Bay Athletic Club, but we're always looking for more who help contribute, help with the kids. And then I think we probably should have done this first. What is the Pivot program? You want to do our overview, referee?
Oh, well, sure. The Pivot program is really an intensive in-community treatment environment for the youth at risk. Those youth at risk are at risk of being removed from the community again, being removed from their home and into either detention or residential treatment. And so it's really designed to help prevent those children, those kids, from being removed, or it's also a way for those who have been in a long-term placement, like 10 months or so, who've had extreme structure, come back to the community without just releasing them without any guidance. They go from extreme structure to home environment with nothing in between. So this pivot really is designed to help them ease back into a community structure with some actual treatment from mental health, from employment, from schooling, and also to engage their families, to help their families also readjust to the children coming back home.
And I think that part of where this came from, part of where this came from is, what do we need? What do our kids need that we see all the time that we're not providing? And that baseline always is education. Almost every one of our very worst kids, and by very worst, I mean the ones that are most at risk for out-of-home placement, almost all of them come in first as a truancy. And some of them come in as early as 3rd and 4th grade. And so we knew education had to be a foundation. We also know that there is a real lack of accessibility to consistent counseling services for youth in this community. And some of that is because of the parents of our kids, that they just won't drive them to community mental health every week for appointments. And some of it is because of turnover in staffing, that we'll get a kid who will get established with a counselor and 6 months later the counselor leaves, and our youth just do not want to start all over again. The other big need for almost every kid that comes through here is money. Almost every one of them are on Medicaid. A lot qualify for free lunch. They come from homes where there's a lot of trouble meeting basic needs. And so how do we help with that? So we brought Nemrock in as job coach, counseling, working with the kids on developing resumes. You know, when I went out and got my first job, my mom and dad made me put on nice clothes, made me walk into a restaurant, ask for an application, fill it out. They taught me, you know, how to go in there and act, shake hands, look people in the eye, tell them your name, follow up with a phone call. A lot of our youth don't have people at home that can provide them information like that. And even if they do, it feels so intimidating to them that to even walk into McDonald's and say, can I get an application, almost feels like too much. So that Nemrock piece is really important because it allows for those skills for these kids, from resume development to appropriate behavior in an interview at an early age. So we can maybe help them gain employment or even sharpen their focus. Where do you think you want to go? What do you think you want to do? The kids have gone to a variety of employers all over town prior to the November shutdown, but Nemrock has done a really good job at exposing these kids to all kinds of different industrial type jobs and also some fast food type facilities to see, you know, what are your interests and where are we at? They also work with the kids with those, I don't know if you call it a personality test, but that stuff. What are you good at and what do you think you'd want to do? So that employment piece was really big to us as well. And I'm missing something. We talked about the counseling. Oh, school success. I don't know if we could have done this without school success. Amy Hunt is our worker in the classroom, and she's with these kids all the time. With COVID, she was doing Google Meets, delivering them food. She's a support person that helps arrange all their schedules so they know where they're going, what they're supposed to be doing, and what the expectations are, but she's available to them as a resource person. We have a young lady who has a current abuse neglect case, and Amy's been helping her locate and participate in parenting classes. So Amy is just kind of this jack of all trades that really gives these kids the kind of individualized attention that they need and develops these individual treatment plans to help these kids be successful. And for us, that's really the strength of this program, that this is not a large scale, one size fits all. Every component of this, from the counseling to the education to the work experience, all of this is tailored to each specific youth and their abilities and desires. So it, for us so far, is working out really well, because you've got kids that are at risk, don't really know where to go, and they're all showing up every day. They're all doing their schoolwork every day. They're all participating in counseling twice a week. And watching that change, watching these kids become the kind of kids that have hope, has been incredibly rewarding professionally. But Amy has done a lot of that. So that individualized attention, I think, has made all the difference here. And we're doing it for all these kids for less than we would do it for one kid in a residential out of community placement for the whole year. So I think that's another really important part of this. And then I think, referee, you can probably talk about the eligibility. You're doing most of our referrals and placements.
Right. So how the students get into the Pivot program really starts with me, and with in consultation with the juvenile division, the probation officers. So mostly they are juveniles who have been in the system. They're in either, they start out in 9th grade through 12th grade. They can be eligible for this program, although we have quite a few students or youths that are probably 7th and 8th graders that could also benefit from this program. But we started this year with grades 9 through 12. And so they have to be an Alpena County youth. And I read the cases, I read the backgrounds. The probation department does the legwork. They do all the research on the student, on the families, on the reason for why they're in court to begin with. And then they outline that. I read the report. We have a court hearing, and it becomes clear to me that there's something more going on with this person who needs more of a structure environment. And so in order to prevent further trouble or further development, where they're going to be placed in secure detention or a residential facility. And so with that, at the court hearing is usually when I make the decision that, yes, let's put them in Pivot. It could be a couple court hearings, because maybe I'll throw that idea out there. Probation department will then talk to the family. They'll talk to the caseworkers, Ms. Hunt, and they'll find out whether or not it's actually a good fit. So sometimes my idea doesn't pan out, but for the most part, we try to work together, even including the student and the family, to make sure that Pivot is actually going to be a benefit for them, because we don't want to throw a student in it who absolutely won't participate. We don't want to put someone in it that's not going to show up. We don't want to put someone in it whose parents are adamantly opposed to it. So it does take a collaboration to make a referral into the program. The other way is through a neglect abuse case. There was a young 16-year-old who was a young mother who was at risk of losing her child. And so, well, actually, she did have the child placed in foster care, but we were trying to get that 16-year-old to engage more in a structured program. And so that neglect and abuse referral was appropriate. And then sometimes the student is a dual ward. So both they have a juvenile case and they are involved in a neglect and abuse case, usually as a child. And so they come into the program that way. So it's definitely someone who needs intensive structure and intensive intervention to help them remain in the community, remain at home, or remain in foster care placement. And so those students are identified hopefully early on, or those students who are coming back from residential placement and needing structured reintegration into the community, back into their home. So really that's how students are eligible for this program.
And this is kind of a look at our overview of what the schedule looks like. The school was kind enough to let us utilize a big room, 2 rooms actually, at ACE's Academy. And Laura Stibbets, the principal over there, has been instrumental. in helping for this smooth transition. But they do the online schooling with APS. The kids have their Chromebook, but they are in the classroom. Amy Hunt, in conjunction with Nemrock, and Sue Sexton has just recently taken the position for Pivot with Nemrock. Both of them lead the weekly activities and instruction. We have a wonderful counselor, Marcy Tremaine Nunley, from Catholic Human Services, who comes in twice a week, meets with the kids both individually and as a group, also goes through family therapy as appropriate. We call the family. Sometimes the family comes in to participate if and when it's determined that the youth needs it. So it's, again, just a highly structured environment, individualized to this particular youth, to make sure all those needs are met. And Bay Athletic Club was also kind enough to donate us a Beachbody on demand subscription. So the kids are doing yoga at least once a week at Bay Urban. They've allowed us use of their Bay Urban facility, and also provided workout gear and yoga mats for the kids. So that's another, the first time we took the kids in for yoga, and referee Schultz and I are right there doing yoga with them, as is Amy Hunt, Christy Butch, our probation officer. The first time they did it, we heard a couple groans, a little bit of and by the third time doing yoga, everybody admits they kind of like it and they feel a little bit better after it. So I think, again, it's part of this just whole person view of these kids, and yoga is just another component that it seems like is pretty successful for us. And I think we've covered most of this, but what Pivot means to the youth. And for me, I can tell you we're on month 4, I think now, of Pivot in the community. And the one thing that I see in these kids, and maybe referee Schultz, you can build on this too. The one thing that I see is they've got hope again. We have a young man in the program now that when I took this job in 2015, he was 12 years old. He came before us for marijuana in the school, 12 years old, and he was smoking marijuana in the bathroom at school. And he has been out of the home at least 3 times in residential and or detention placements. He most recently was in a detention facility, and we brought him out when Pivot started so he could participate in the Pivot program. And this is the longest since we've known him, since he was 12 years old, that he's gone without a probation violation or a new charge or petition. And to see him kind of become the kind of kid that he believes in, he's going to school, he's looking for jobs, he's talking about what he thinks he wants his life to look like in 5 years. And we've never heard him talk like that. We've never seen him do anything like that. So to watch a young man realize that he does have potential, that this road that's in front of him isn't the one he has to take, I feel like has been one of the most surprising things about this. When you watch a kid kind of believe in themselves the way you believe in them, it's a pretty powerful thing. And that hope, what that's done to these youth, I think is probably the most valuable part of this. Maybe you want to build on that, referee, or?
Yes, I think so too. I think that for all the kids, we have one girl in this program who hasn't gone to a day of school since probably she was in 5th grade. And this is the first time, now that she's 16, that she's been to school every single day that Pivot has had school. And yes, the online was a hard transition for that person in particular, but every day we've had an open building, she's been there, that she could participate. She has been remarkable. It's just outstanding to watch. If you give these children an opportunity, what they can do, it's so hopeful to me and hopeful to them. I think that as part of the conception of this program is that Ms. Mott and I, we've worked together for so long. We've seen these students go in and out of placements, the same student go in and out, cycle in, cycle out, detention, treatment centers. you name it, and they do well wherever they go. And then they come home, they have a honeymoon period, things are great. And then 2 months later, 3 months later, they have a new charge. And we have talked about, what are we doing? Why are we spending all this money? What is the successful outcome for these students? Because that should be our goal. And really, the only thing that we could do was come up with something mimicking their out of town placement here in the community. But of course, we couldn't do it ourselves. We needed school, we needed a place, we needed mental health treatment, we needed intensive structure. We needed to give these children some hope and some individual attention. And we needed to impact their families to make sure that their families were actually buying into this program, so that we could not only change the student, we could change their home environment, and we could change their future. Because now we are trying to break that cycle of the juvenile growing up and being used to incarceration at detention or a treatment facility, and then they're used to the incarceration at the jail or prison. So we're trying to break that cycle for them and their families.
Janelle and Kimberly, this is Susan. I've got a question. How many youth do we have in this program right now?
We have 6 enrolled at this time. We started with a core group of 5, and we've added 1 more youth. In fact, today was her first day in the program.
Okay. And is there any thoughts of expanding this outside of Alpena County?
Absolutely. We're a dual county circuit. We cover Alpena and Montmorency County both. So pending, success here and coordinating with the school, the plan is 100% to bring Montmorency in next year. And then as the needs, Alcona, Presque County, if you've got youth there that may be appropriate, we'd have to establish a daily rate. But certainly the plan is to allow the program to grow as the need is there.
Excellent.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, one of our other plans has always been, and again, it's happened quickly and then COVID has kind of shut everything down. But one of the other things we've talked to the Department of Health and Human Services about is also developing kind of a foster care component to this, because there are some kids who maybe don't need detention but can't stay in the home that they're in. So if we could get a family in the community that was willing to foster them and then also have them at school in this intensive probation or this intensive pivot program, transition to a home that is safe and supportive, I think that allows for the growing then as well of the program, especially if we have kids from out of county that may benefit from this. But we have a lot of in-county needs that aren't being met. So.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. Do we have anybody else that has a question? You can just unmute your mic.
This is Judy Nichols, and I'm wondering, you said that there was a high rate of recidivism. When the kids return home, is it the dysfunction of the family? Is that what sends them back into the old patterns, or do you know?
Well, I think we haven't really done a statistical type of study, but from what I see, in my own opinion, is that yes, it does involve the dysfunction of a family, but it also involves the fact that there is no real structure. So you have a student who is not getting the type of attention, or not getting the type of rules, or not being required to follow the rules at home, and then committed some sort of delinquent activity, got a charge, came in front of me at court, and then for some reason continues to do delinquent activity and ends up in detention. When they come home, it's usually a good part of it is the fact that they are not, they're falling just back into the same old routine. Nobody's been given any tools to help them parent the child, to help them, keep them on track. And so, yes, I think that there is a dysfunction of a family that comes into play.
And I think to build on that, the other side of that is all these facilities that we send them to, Escanaba, Detroit, Saginaw, there's a geographic limitation to what they can provide as aftercare, that you can't have someone come in from Escanaba twice a week to follow up once these kids come home to make sure the parents are doing what they're supposed to do, the kids are doing what they're supposed to do, that structure is in place for success. And again, I think one of the strengths of this is we're all right here. We know these kids, we know these families. As we transition them out, they still have access to us. We have access to them. We can bring them into Pivot 2 days a week to help continue that after they've completed the program, to really set down the kind of road these kids need to be successful. So I think that's been another limitation. A lot of these facilities have really great aftercare programs as long as you live within 25 miles of them. We don't live within 25 miles of any facilities. So it's almost impossible for us to get the kind of aftercare that these kids and families really need. They are in a highly structured 24-hour-a-day oversight. You sleep when they tell you to sleep, shower when they tell you to shower, eat what they tell you to eat when they tell you to eat. And then one day they're just dropped off home and that's it. And that transition has proven very difficult for these kids. And a lot of these home situations are grandparents, raising kids. You've got we have a lot of incarcerated parents. Some are, kids that have been adopted. So they were already involved with the abuse neglect system. So it's really a complicated, almost every one of these youth has a very complicated background. And when you throw all of that together, the long term from a facility we're just not seeing the benefit at all.
But we have you, and we have some of these pieces in place. And then the next closest thing we have to you is Saginaw or Escanaba. Why doesn't the east side of the state have resources like you seem to be able to provide? What are we missing here? Why can't you do what you say needs to be done?
I'm not sure. I understand. I feel like we are doing what needs to be done. I think that there is a lack of resources here, that if you go to, as part of preparing for Pivot, is I reached out to every county I knew that had a day treatment program. What are you guys doing and how are you doing it? And the one thing almost all of them have in common is they have an in-county juvenile, either detention or residential facility that houses their day program. So they've already got a spot and staff available for the kids, and they've already got programming in place that they can set these kids up with no major changes, no increase in staffing. So it's kind of easy for them. They have this set up. We don't have any juvenile facilities like this. Our closest juvenile facility is Roscommon, and that's just a detention facility. It is not a long-term placement option. Generally, 21 days is about as long as they'd like to keep them. We have had kids there longer.
And then also, I just want to mention the challenge of finding an appropriate placement too, which with COVID has made it impossible to place any juvenile out of this county. Yeah. They require a COVID test before they go, which where we're going to get a test, and so it's been extremely challenging. And then, and as far as detention centers, we have one in St. Ignace, the Sioux tribe, but that doesn't have a residential, or it doesn't really have any mental health treatment available for that facility. That's just strictly a housing. Then there's Saginaw. They have some residential facilities there. There's Bay County. There's Detroit. There's Grand Rapids. There's Roscommon. We do have another partner that we work with sometimes in lieu of detention for those appropriate kids, which would be in Misaki. So again, we're talking hours in the car. We're talking, they have people there at their facilities that are, licensed and educated to be providers, but to come here, to bring any of them here is just nearly impossible. Although I do want to put in a plug here for Ms. Mott. She was able to get 2 providers from Roscommon who actually work at the Roscommon facility to come here to Alpena County twice a month to maintain treatment for our delinquents and their families. They have parents, grandparents, kids, families, all come here because those 2 mental health providers come here to see our families. And it's a trek. I'm very impressed. I don't know how Ms. Mott got them to agree to this, but they come. So
Good. Good for you.
Congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Awesome.
I listen to this and I wonder how many kids out there that are potentially good candidates for this program that can make a difference in their life. And what is it going to take? Is it going to take additional funding to do that? And is that a resource that obviously is probably not one to get to, but is that what it is? It is just funding and resources?
Well, and I think it's a little bit of both,
Yeah.
The reason we got the 2 providers coming in is we had a number of kids come through here with CSC allegations, which is criminal sexual conduct. And some of them are awful. I mean, my girls are 7 and 3, and there are police reports I've read that still stick with me. And so we've got, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids that need high level, very, very intensive treatment to get to the bottom of what's going on. And we were just not getting anywhere here. There's and I get it. I don't want to become a doctor and sit around with alleged child sex offenders all day. I understand from a professional point of view where it comes from. So when we stumbled across these gentlemen from Bridges, I just laid it out for them. Here are our needs. Here's what's not happening. I don't even know what we're going to do in this community because I can't afford to send 6 kids away at the rate of $400 to $500 a day to get the treatment they need. Can you help us? Like, I don't even know where else to go. And I think, honestly, they felt bad. I think they looked at these kids and said, holy smokes.
Hey, guilt works.
Smokes. Yeah. And I think ultimately we were able to play on their sympathy, and they came in, and it's been a year and a half now. The gentlemen from Bridges have been coming, and that has been phenomenal for us. That consistency, same faces, same time, same issues has been phenomenal for our kids. And I think Pivot is doing that same thing. So that consistency, that showing up, seeing the same faces. And I think as we expand, I mean, at the end of the day, when you work in the government, it always comes down to money. I can, talk all I want about hope, improving outcomes. It comes to a point where someone says, no, we're not spending any more money on this, or we're not giving you any more money. So the hope with Pivot is, and I touched on this previously, the hope is that we reallocate money that we would have spent in residential care. I think I went through the numbers with Referee Schultz, but I think last year we spent $480,000 in residential costs just in Alpena County for kids that needed placement. We can run this program for 25% of that.
Wow.
So if we can do this and keep one kid, if we plant little seeds with all of them, but even if only one youth stays out of residential, this program is paid for itself. So
Absolutely.
I think there's a real cost component to it that matters to people higher up on the scale than I am, but there's a real community value here as well. We've got, Referee Schultz and I obviously are employed in county, but this program has, I think, 3.5 full-time, they call them FTEs, full-time employees, but that's money that we were giving to, Roscommon. We were giving it to Wolverine. We're now investing that in people in this county to provide a higher level of care to kids that has the real potential to kind of change that trajectory, that we're not just writing a check for $10,000 to Wolverine every month. We're giving, NEMSCA, NEMROC, Catholic Human Services, $9,000 a month in total to treat all these kids and keep them here. So
that's great. So do we have any other questions? I mean, it's such a topic that is, you just want to learn more because you want to make a difference in these kids' lives. And do we have any other questions out there? I know we have a lot of people.
Yeah, Susan, they briefly touched on this, but one of the questions I had was about the funding. But it sounds like the funding is simply taken from other categories and moved into this. You're simply reallocating the resources you have. Is there any new funding in this, or is this old funding reallocated?
At this point, and one of the things that we've discovered, and I ran a treatment foster care program for 2.5 years, I think, before I came into this job. And one of the things that we've seen over the years is we're really good around here at getting grants. Everybody wants to give us money, but we're not so great at keeping grants. And what happens is we apply for these grants, everybody's hip, hip, hooray, it's not going to cost us anything. And in 3 years, the grant money dries up and all the programs go away. So when Referee Schultz and I talked to the judge, one of the things that we both felt strongly about is we've got to, as a court, fund this to start with. It's the only way it makes sense. We've got to be able to afford this if we want to keep it going. And once we have some success, once we see we're not spending that money on residential, then let's start talking to our community partners. We've got something that's working, help us sustain it and help us grow it. So I think instead, and I know it sounds backwards based on what we've seen, but I thought we can spend a lot of time, hopefully get some funding. And again, I understand it too. If I'm a grant writer, do I want to help 500 people in Ingham County or 15 people in Alpena County? I understand that we don't get the return on the dollar because we just don't have the numbers these bigger communities have. But I'm hopeful that's what will make this sustainable for us, that this will be our most expensive year, knock on wood. And if we can get through this year, have some success, then we can start applying for some grants to help undercut some of these costs and also expand the program to provide more services for more kids.
Well, that would certainly be a positive for sure. Michael, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Dick Bremer. Just a question about these other facilities throughout the state we've been sending people to. What size are those facilities and how many residents do they typically have in them, out of curiosity?
Well, they range in size. I think the smallest one, I think Roscommon can take 12 youth at a time. And then you've also got facilities like Wolverine and Vista Maria that are multi-campus, multi-dimensional, multi-programming. I think at any given time, there's over 300 youth at Wolverine. Same with Vista Maria, that these are large-scale, privately run juvenile rehabilitation facilities. So they really vary. And that's the other thing, is every one of these facilities is just about as different as, each of us are individually, that some focus on really specific things. There are mental health facilities. There are ones aimed at, those that have been victimized by sexual abuse, those who are perpetrators of it. There are facilities geared towards younger youth to try and keep them a little bit safer. So they're really as varied as you can think they would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how are we doing here? Do we have any more questions? Do you have, Janelle and Kimberly, do you have anything you want to wrap up with?
Before I go, I will tell all of you to be on the lookout. As COVID, I'm hopeful, amps down and we return more to normal. One of the things that we're gonna do is start looking for mentors for these kids. Someone to take them out to lunch once or twice a month and say, how are you doing and what do you need? Remind them good in the world, do good, be good, hope. So I'm going to start soon, probably bombarding you with emails every couple of weeks. Here's what we're looking for. Here's what we need. We've also talked about broadening what we need for next year, that there are some transportation costs that have gotten, I don't think any of us realized how much it was going to cost to transport 6 kids to ACES Academy. So there are things like that. Food, we're going to start calling on the community, is my guess, in the next 12 months. So I think if you know people that would be interested, feel free to give out my email address. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the community, but I think we're going to start asking for some help in the coming months. So be on the lookout.
Okay. We have a lot of our members that do that are either former teachers or in the medical personnel that, do look for opportunities to work with youth. So we'll certainly put that out there.
And
Kimberly?
also, Ms. Hunt, Amy from the School Success, she always is looking for opportunities to engage the students with her as a supervisor, whether, I know it's COVID, so whether it's a Zoom presentation or whether it's a live presentation once COVID's on the back burner, or, even if it's an idea, let's go, here's an adventure that your students might like. She's always looking for ideas. So feel free to reach out if you think of an idea that might be helpful to these at-risk students. We always have an open mind.
Okay. Great. Do we have anything else? Any other questions? Do you ladies have anything else to add? This has been a wonderful presentation, and I really we all appreciate you taking the time to present the program to us.
We thank you for your time and your interest and just being interested in the children of our community. They really need us. They need someone to watch out for them and give them hope. So thank you very much.
Well, as a resident of Montmorency County, I can tell you that I hope that the program gets expanded over here too, because I know that there's a great need for it here also. So we appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Ladies, thank you very much for taking your time, and thanks everybody for participating in today's presentation. I think we all walk away with hope that there are programs out there to make a difference in kids that are have issues and serious issues, and so hopefully we can make a difference in their lives too. So thank both of you very much, and like we said, this has been recorded and will be out on our YouTube channel, so we'll get that out to our members that missed it today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Yes,
okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You
Thanks,
too.
everybody. We'll be getting off of it now, so we appreciate it.